Right, so we're going to continue on from last lesson when you was looking at the ways of transmitting data. Okay, so we looked at Bluetooth, we looked at Wi-Fi and radio signals and so on. Okay, then you discussed the importance of bandwidth and bit rate when transmitting data. So now we're going to look at the different types of transmission and communication media that govern the bandwidth. So now we're going to identify and discuss the media that governs bandwidth. Then you're going to describe each type of media, and then you're going to answer some exam questions based on the topic. Okay, so right, so firstly, the way to transmit data, which is still commonly used almost everywhere, is cables. Okay, so schools, offices, everywhere use cables. So copper cables are commonly used to connect the various devices to land. So that could be connecting printers, that could be connecting projectors and so on, not just the computers themselves. And the most common cable is the shielded twisted pair cable. So as you can see by the pictures here, you can see that there's 4 sets of cables that are twisted around. Okay, and they're most commonly used in the Ethernet cables right here. Okay, now inside, as I said, there's 4 twisted pairs of cables that are protected by plastic tubes, as you can see right here. Okay, so you can see the cables are inside and they're protected by the plastic tubes. Now there's no earth wire, and the disadvantage of this is that the packets of data can simply get lost in transmission when there's a high frequency of data going through, okay, because as there is no earth wire. Now, copper cables are suitable for distances of up to 100 meters. Anything after that, the signal tends to weaken. Now, this is a very fast way of transmitting data, but of course there are disadvantages. Okay, so the bandwidth is governed by the frequency that the copper cable can accommodate. Okay, so bandwidth, may be quite fast, but then it depends on how, the frequency of the copper cable really, because that's where the data is being transferred through. Now, the problem is as you know from your science lessons, that copper is very, very conductible for electricity. So now, as electricity can pass, and obviously signals can pass through the cable very, very quickly, electrical interference will affect the transmission rate, so the data packets can get lost. So there's a problem right there. There's a disadvantage right there. Now, the higher the bandwidth that's required, the STP cables, that's the twisted pair, okay, shielded twisted pair, sorry, can be used if they include a metal shield and an earth wire. So an earth wire has been introduced, and as you can see here, these copper cables have got a metal shield. I mean, I don't know how, in all honesty, I've never stripped back a copper cable, so, I'm not sure how accurate that image is, but I think it can give you an idea. Right, now moving on, wireless. Okay, so wireless is very, very common. It is in our everyday lives. We all have, not just one mobile device, but for example, I've got 3 sitting right here in front of me, because I've got my tablet, I've got my laptop, and I've got my smartphone. Okay, so some of you may have more mobile devices in front of you, because you may have a tablet, you may have a laptop, you may have a smartphone, and maybe you've even got a smartwatch as well. Now, wireless has a lot of advantages, okay? So now the transmission has many, many positives, because you don't have to rely on cables, you don't have the mess of cables and the trip hazard of cables, and you can transmit data through a wireless transmission, very seamlessly, okay? And it can be used on the move. You can go to restaurants, you can go to bars, you can go to cafes, and you will find hotspots that you can connect to. Now, it does have less frequencies available, so therefore it has less bandwidth. So although, you know, cables may seem like an old-fashioned way, I suppose, to transmit data, and probably, you know, seem like, you know, a messy way, or however you want to look at it, it takes a lot of setting up, it's expensive. There's still nothing faster than a cable, really. Okay. Now, wireless transmission is susceptible to interference, but as you know from last lesson, you know, that is being worked on. Okay, so, and that is improving throughout the years. So the devices can get, as I said, interfere with each other. It's been known, obviously, that baby monitors can interfere. It's been known that if the microwave ovens can interfere. But I think that's really becoming, from what I can see, a thing of the past. So, and that is improving because wireless is the way forward. So now the interference in this, as you know, can result in a loss of data. So now the bandwidth can be weakened through the distance of the wireless signal. Okay, so for example, like, you know, maybe when you're at home and you've got your Wi-Fi router in one room, and if you go somewhere else in the house, you can tend to find that you lose signal, and you tend to have to use the repeaters or whatever to make up that signal, or a bridge. But bandwidth also, there's been a problem in terms of obstacles such as walls and ceilings that can reduce the strength of signals. Now, particularly when walls and ceilings tend to have steel inside them, because obviously there has to be, in most buildings, steel supports. So I tend to find that that can actually cause a problem as well. Now, moving on to optical, so fibre optic, basically. Now, fibre optic has come along. It's a lot faster, and it works incredibly well. So the fibre optics are not, are not susceptible to electrical interference. And the reason for that is, in fact, that's annoying me, and I'm going to change that right now. Apologies for that. They're not susceptible to interference. Okay. Now, the reason for that is because the data is transmitted by making the use of light. Okay. So now the cable has transparent central glass cores, and they're protected with cladding. Now, the reason for this is because these cables can be broken easily. So inside these tubes, you can find that they're very, very well protected by the cladding around them. So when the light enters the central core, it can't get out until it reaches the other end. There's only one route. Okay. So now this is how it works. So the data is mixed with a carrier beam, and then it's injected, I shouldn't say injected, sorry, into the fibre optic cable. And then at the other end of the cable, the photo detector senses the light and converts it into a normal electrical signal. Okay, so the signal is then passed on to an electric demodulator, and then that extracts the original data. Okay, so fibre optic has come along, so it doesn't have the problem with electrical interference, and it works incredibly well. So now what you're going to do is on Google Classrooms, if you're in my class, you can get the exam questions directly from Google Classroom, or if you click on the link in the description of this video, there's some there's some exam questions for you to complete. Okay, very best of luck to you.